real. And the second thing is how we have been strategically been able to uh, leverage other federal, state, and grant funds to of the funds that we're spending. We're spending about for every dollar that we spend, we get about $5 back from other outside sources, which is a great accomplishment for our area, and we should continue to impress upon that as a strategy to make happen. Anyone have any questions on this before I move on? Moving forward, some of these projects we've seen and completed. This is kind of a 2-year. Some of the projects have been in process, like with NEPAs and stuff like there. So we're going 2 years back, finishing out this current year. Obviously, the Georgetown 25th Street intersection, which has been completed. That project actually is a pretty simple project, but it's really solved and is really a lot of issues in that corridor. And I remember that it would take you a couple lights to get through that intersection change, and just a small change in adjustment, but it happened there. It's kind of a model for many of the intersections that we need to look at in the future. We talked, and I'm sure we still all remember the 20th Street Bridge project, which is completed. That took a while. That was, and you see next to that on the handouts that you have, and there's some other handouts if someone wants to look at it, is that the Georgetown was an MPO project, 20th Street was a TDOT project, but that is done. Number 3, we have the Blythe connector. That is the sidewalk from what is now Blythe Bauer Elementary School and Avery Johnson Park, where it has a sidewalk corridor all the way through the neighborhood, all the way down to Blythe Oldfield School and Blythe Oldfield Park. And that will continue to go down to 9th Street and connect in Wildwood and connect into the county health department as well. So that's, of course, we all are familiar with that. It was a 3-year funding process. We're in the last year. We have to get that completed by July of this year. So with CDBG funds and what we would call the diabetes grant, which was from the state, we were able to fund all of that. I think the amount of funds that we spent on this project has been a great investment, and for a lower amount of money in that area. Number 4, you have the 20th Street sidewalk and the 17th Street sidewalk. This was the MPO project. We all know that this project took a decent amount of time to work through the state system. We are anticipating, unless there's been any changes, Robert, that this will be done before July 2022. I think at the last meeting he said an earlier date, so I'm giving them a month of leeway. But they're making a lot of progress and moving forward. If you haven't driven on 20th Street, it really has made a difference on just the way the road looks and the way it feels. And then when they're all done, they're obviously going to pave 20th Street all the way from the apartments out by the interchange all the way down to Key Street. So moving on to the SR 60 in Georgetown Road, the completion date is sometime in 2024, I believe. They're making tremendous effort there to move that along, as many of you know. So we're just very happy that the project has started and moving forward. The Parker Streetscape project. This is also a project that's in motion. This is a city project. This is in combination with the PI Center for the county and with Lee University's new track outdoor facility, which they host soccer games and they have a number of other exercises over there. We have probably 75% of this project done. The reason we pulled off, we've been waiting until we get to when school leaves so that we can shut down the road and maximize our time. And also that the PI Center
has been having significant heavy equipment going in and out of that road, and we didn't want to put the curb or pave that over. So starting in May, this will be a priority project to finish the curb and to make that done. Now this will have all of the street lights are already up. It'll have trees, fairly decent sized trees planted. So it'll be a tree lined corridor through there. We think will be one of our better corridors entering the university and some of those the Bradley County High Center and Troy. Peerless Connector, which is the phase one. This is the road that we talked about probably 4 years ago, which is the continuation of Peerless Road as it connected into what we call the D&G facility, and then back around and connects into Mounts Creek as an alternative access route to that Mounts Creek intersection. If we were to go back there, the curb is probably 60% done. Some of it is paved. We have some sidewalks going on, and this summer we will finish that. I think the curb will be finished in the next few weeks, and which will complete that entire project, and that will be open. We have a couple new restaurants going in there in that area. There's Popeyes. Then you have Cheddar's, which is in that area across the street, and there's another medical office building going back there as well. And be glad when this gets behind us. This was also we had an agreement for much of this project. We give a lot of credit to the developers who did most of the grading work, and we've spent very little money of doing a lot of those elements. And so this was a good public-private agreement, which we were able to open this up and opened up that 25 acres for new economic development in our community. Excuse me. The Frontage Road Connectors, you know, was a city project that created a safety option for people coming down Benmore Drive, coming behind the Chick-fil-A and the Wendy's, and that has been complete for a while. And as you know, part of that was, while we didn't do it, the private company that now owns which is Benmore Drive is a private, they put it so you couldn't turn left out of there. Occasionally we'll see right-hand turns out of there, but we think it's really cut down, or left-hand turns out of there. It's really cut down a lot of that traffic. So, number 11, we have the Indian Hills Entrance Project, which is a city project. For most part, the road is finished. We have to finish some curb up in the top of the cul-de-sac that we opened up there, and then we have to put some fence up to protect the neighborhood and the houses. And then I think we have to do one more paving. I believe, Tommy, we have on our list to pave that entire neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
Cleveland Utilities went in and did a decent amount of utility work, and I think they still may be there. And we hope to, as you get questions about all of that, is that the whole neighborhood will probably be paved within the next year. So, in the summer, yep. So that's a benefit, but the road is definitely in need of some paving through that. Candy's Lane Stormwater Project. This was a city project, and as we know, it was completed, and it's held the test of time. You know, this last week it got to about 2 inches of going over the top of the road. And John Sparkman, who now works for Cleveland Utilities, I conveyed that we should send him a big thank you for getting that engineering correct on that when he was in his private world. But in all honesty, it's worked out very fine. Normally, in a flood situation, that probably would have closed down that road for maybe 2 or 3 days, and so it helps from a transportation standpoint. The Dalton Pike sidewalk, this is what we call a MMA project. And it's a state project that 90% is funded with state funds and 10% with city funds. And this project is, if you go out by the interchange, a lot of the sidewalk is done. It's really added a lot out in that area. Cleaned up some of the ditch sections, and I think you can see where it's going to be a great pedestrian access from the Walmart on the south side of the community all the way down to Wildwood, and it will connect somewhere into the new sidewalk that we're making for the diabetes grant, which we already talked about. So that project is going along just fine. We haven't heard hardly any complaints.
Do you have any comments on that, Robert?
No, you've got a good.
And I have in here that project should be completed probably this fall. I have September. So it's a pretty straightforward project, and looking forward to getting that project done, which had been out there for a long time. And again, it's even better that the state is paying about 90% of the project. We have a Paul Huff repaving. This is an MPO project. This is certainly becoming more and more necessary with new pipeline work or gas line that went in. We are in the process of getting NEPA. The good thing about this is that there's no real design work and there's no right of way that we need to get. So it should go through the state process fairly quickly. I have in here summer of 23. We would rather it be next spring, but we're just trying to be as realistic as possible. LIC North, this is the Tom Rowland interchange. As we were just listening to the mayor talk at Main Street, it was the road to nowhere that people had talked about, is that this will connect in that road into many of the neighborhoods back on the Pleasant Grove area. This is a state project, where I think the state paid 50%, county paid 25%, and the city paid 25%. And I think everything is going along. Is there any, has that started out there yet? No, but they're getting close.
Yeah. They're clearing some trees.
They're clearing, so it has started.
Well, not the project. The town line hasn't started.
Okay. So LIC North is on its way. That you have Mouse Creek and the Paul Huff intersection that we have. Some of it's partially done. The mast arms finally came in and they're sitting over at CU, and we're having conversations about how to get those up as soon as possible, and in what order to do that with some of the changes at some of the corners. We expect that that this will be done in 2 or 3 segments, and with the mast arms, as we talked about, the foundations being laid and those mast arms going up probably this summer, with all the work concluding probably late summer, early fall, which is our goal. And that will be a big deal. That will open up that interchange to, coming down Mouse Creek Road. It will have protected right-hand lane. It has 2 through lanes. It'll have 2 left-hand turn lanes and 2 receiving lanes. So you'll have 7 lanes coming out of Mouse Creek, which will help. And that will also reflect in the Paul Huff corridor, which will also be expanded as well. So that will be a major improvement as far as traffic in some of those tight areas. The Coy Street and 25th Street intersection. This is the widening project that we've talked about. We met with TDOT probably about 10 days ago. It was nice that we met with their engineers. They are working and moving forward on this project. I get the sense that it's a priority for them. They said that their local programs will send the city an agreement in the next, a couple of weeks ago, they said in the next month. So we're expecting it probably in the next week or so, that they will want to have our $2 million in advanced funds that we had already promised the state. They need that as they're waiting for the money to come in their process to fund the actual construction. We're actually going to help with some of the engineering and right-of-way acquisition and some of those things. The design hasn't changed a lot because this, as you recognize, this project was already fully designed at one point, so there isn't a whole lot to do. When we get this agreement, we'll look at that. The question that we're going to be focused on, and that we've had conversations with our legislative delegation, is what is their time frame for this project? That we're going to push very hard, since the city is contributing $2 million, that we would want that moved up, especially with this infrastructure money coming from the federal government. Essentially it's a project ready to go. That's the time that we will probably actively continue to talk to our legislative delegation and impress upon them that having this done is in everyone's best interest as soon as possible. So when we get that, we're going to have more conversations on the timing. So we'll have our $2 million check asking for a date certain that they want to begin. So that will be an important date coming up, is there will be that negotiation to make that happen. Peerless Road and Paul Huff intersection. And then the next one is the Frontage Drive Paul Huff intersection. I should have brought the design for the Peerless Road. And that's pretty much done, don't you think, Jonathan? And that's probably pretty close to ready to be bid. And then Frontage Drive is that we're just finishing up some details with that. That those will be bid in the spring of 22, which could be any time now. And those will be similar project as what we talked about Mouse Creek. There will be widening the intersections and making that more efficient travel lanes through those areas and make it a better way to proceed from a traffic standpoint. And that's consistent with the 9 or 10 point plan that we laid out. And those are two of the big pieces. Obviously, the Ben Moore Drive one we've gotten done. And then we have another piece of that is on Wyatt, which is out in front of where Harbor Freight is. There's going to be a big median that will go in there that will stop the traffic from making big left-hand turns in there, which is very well. Project number 20 out of the other 30 that I have to go through. Edward Street streetscaping. This is a project that we have an agreement with the Sand Mill. If you go down there, they are putting in conduit to. We had a lot of, because obviously it used to be a hosiery and a foundry, and there was way more electricity and wires and lines. And the council agreed that, well, we should get rid of a lot of that. So we've started that process, and then they'll take down those lines, and then we're going to redo the streetscape on both sides of that street with decorative street lights and some street trees, and it'll look, I think, finished. And I think that's a positive. That's a positive project for the downtown to make that happen. That project is going along. They plan on being done this fall, probably September, October. Been around and they're really doing a lot of demo, and it should be actually fairly nice inside that building. So we're excited about that. Project number 21. We have the 25th Street sidewalk. This is the 10-foot multi-lane project from Peerless up to Georgetown Road, which will go in front of all there, and it'll have new street lighting through there, and a 10-foot sidewalk, and there'll be some aesthetics added in there. That is still in the NEPA phase. Then you have the sister project of that, which is the 25th Street Sidewalk Project, which is a transportation alternative. When you see the TA, that is also in the NEPA process. Project number 283 is the Gott Street, Inman Street Sidewalk. That's a transportation alternatives project as well. This is the one we had talked about of going back and forth with Phase 6. In front of you is a diagram of what that project looks like. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about that. It's doing sidewalk along Inman Street, along Gott Street, actually across the street, connecting into the county health department. This project is being, we're going as fast as possible on this. On your agenda today, we can talk about that. There's a couple property owners that we still need to reach an agreement with, and we need to make sure that the council is aware that if we need to go the next step for eminent domain, that we would certainly be prepared to go in that direction. And this again is a 80-20, 80% state and 20% city. Then you have the RAISE grant. There's already been a kickoff meeting, and we've talked about this. This is the United States Department of Transportation. They have we're in the process of starting the process to get a consultant, which will redo 3rd Street, which will design, consider we'll have a bridge that goes over that, and redo 3rd Street all the way down 3rd Street, and then hook into Inman Street. I should have brought a design of that. Again, this is planning. They're going to have to assess and see what is possible on that, but we're very optimistic that this will be a game changer for the community. Project number 25 is the Greenway Wi-Fi and Safety Project. This is a city project. We get a lot of questions at the Greenway Board about safety and having Wi-Fi and having the call stations and having camera systems, live camera systems. We're looking at funding options for this, on how to fund this the most effective way. But this has been out there for a while. We need to make progress on this. So through this budget process, we'll be talking more about this project and trying to get that on the list to move that through, because we do get a lot of pushback from actively people that use the Greenway. Atkinson Drive widening. So there's two projects on Atkinson Drive, and we split them to try to save money and to save time. Is that the widening, which is really just a paving project, is in the NEPA phase. So that's kind of like what you would have at Paul Huff. You won't have any design. Then we have the Atkinson Drive sidewalk project that we are getting ready to design the sidewalk that will go in front of Cleveland State Community College, going all the way down to Paul Huff. We own most of the right-of-way. There's probably just a couple sections that we would need to get, and it's just a matter of getting our sidewalk contractor out to do that. There isn't a huge amount of engineering that needs to happen for that, but so those are there. One important question, and I misspoke on the paving portion on the MPO project. The roundabout in front of the community college is included in that MPO project. So there's a roundabout there. It's already been designed, and then there'll be paving all the way out to Paul Huff with the new sidewalk. So that MPO project includes the roundabout and paving, and the sidewalk project is
Roundabout coming in.
from Norman Chapel. That's right. And right now it's a T, and they have a design to make it a roundabout to have better access through there.
Will they be done basically at the same time?
The sidewalk project, the issue is from our MPO funds, that you don't have access to all your MPO funds, and those projects have been taking a while. If we kept it all in one project, you were probably looking at, before you had enough money to pay for it rather than that bucket, you're probably looking at 2024, 2025, which would have been out there a while. With this new methodology of splitting this apart, that the entire sidewalk will be completed and done, and then this project will come after it. But we can move this project up because the cost has been cut in half because the sidewalk piece would have been much more. What we find on a lot of the sidewalk projects that go through this MPO system is when the state, when they design a sidewalk, they design it with, what's the right terminology, Jonathan? The pipe. They
Concrete top.
and I'm trying not to say over it. But we can do like we did on Blythe Oldfield, because there's much more effective ways that we can put in different types of pipe, and we don't have to hit as many of you don't have to have a CDI out there, which adds 10 or 15% to that. You don't have to have the engineering design it. You don't have to have all the NEPA work. Is that it's a way for us to more effectively get that laid out there. To answer your question, sidewalk will be done right after that roundabout paving. Central Avenue streetscape, we've had an awfully hard time with this, and we don't completely understand it. The state has been pretty slow on their approvals, so this is still out there, and we're still, this is an important project, and know it has been, is that after we get this off the street thing through, Robert, that's the next one that we're going to focus on.
That's correct.
Just get that central one and go full force and to get that one out of our thing, and we don't understand completely why we're at. Yeah.
Question on that.
Yes.
That it'll go from Parker Street east to Gulf Street.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no. Broad Street. We'll go from,
Broad Street to Gulf Street.
that's right. And we've talked about, but we haven't 100% pulled the trigger of having just cutting it off at the railroad tracks. But I don't think we've made that official at this time, but we've talked about how to be able to do that. And then our own forces would go in and build that past the railroad. A lot of this, the slowdown has been because it goes to the railroad. They like to have continuous sidewalk on a streetscape. Anytime you get the railroad involved, it's hard to work through that. So we're trying to work through that, and I think that's been one of the key.
You do not have a driveway on that for sidewalk, do you?
Not all of it. Not all of it.
This side,
Yeah.
to the west of it, we've already started on part 29. I think it's just collecting tracks.
What's going back, and that's on 80th Street. The project you're talking about on 80th Street is only from First Street to Eden Street, right? Is it going all the way to Central Avenue?
I believe there's already sidewalk on Edward Street. All
There
the
is on the west side.
Yeah, it's
Only run basic traffic, but I always get off west side. But I did, like today, I walked on Sandy Hill, I walked over the,
You know,
yeah, it's all broken tracks. It's just like it looks on Sandy, right? Central's all beat up on both sides.
on the right-hand side, it's all pretty much new down there, but on the other side, it's all beaten up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, can I jump on this? That makes perfect sense, tying it all in, making just for downtown purposes, to tie in College Hill, tie in all the broad here, because it's all about that road. A good while. Well, we're close, because we've got these projects all working together, right? Well, I think if we're gonna do, if we break up the Central Avenue project, we'll be taking off pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing is at the end, we want to have the Gott Street sidewalk system hooked in, so it connects in the College Hill Recreation Center, so that hooks in Mosby Park, which it does, right, Jonathan? Then it hooks into the downtown and Edward Street and hooks in, and the streetscape along Lee University will be a streetscape that will have street trees and decorative lights and raised stuff. And that's what we talked about with Lee University to complete that off. And that should complete that whole system of when you're connecting Lee University, College Hill, Mosby Park, Inman Street, and the downtown proper is what we're looking for, is all that to be connected in.
So my colleagues this morning, I purposely ran about a 50-mile work and Broad Street, just kind of check out lighting and all. Then I came down here to look at this. And there were 2 people at 6:30 in the morning talking to me about what we're talking about. I mean, there's a lot of like upper level apartments, whatever those called. I know the Agora, but there's some other ones. And there's just going to be more people living down there. This is really. I agree with Dave. I think getting all this time tight will make everything.
That's our goal. Exit 27 improvements. I think at our last meeting, you guys voted on something with this. This is a TDOT project. Fixes the exit 2027, the on and off ramps, and we have to help coordinate some of the traffic lights in that area. That's a project that will tie in with our projects that we're doing. You have the CMAC parking lot that hopefully project will probably go and it's a complex project and probably a half-hour explanation on the slowdown on that, but it's still being worked on and is in the NEPA. You have project 31. Jonathan, when do you think this will be bid? Can you take that to the bank? You're supposed to say yes. The Carolina, but they have design.
They have the design.
And they have all the land they need. So it just depends on when they decide that.
When they get their federal funding approval and from the.
All that would be federal funding.
Yeah, it's FEMA, so,
For Army Corps.
yeah, well, that's correct. Army Corps.
So that's the Carolina Pond project. There's some dialogue on this on the back of the side of the Carolina Pond over by Brown Stove on how to deal with that. I think, Jonathan, you guys have worked through a lot of those issues. At some point they wanted to have some gates on in flood situations, and I think we've eliminated those as some issues. And so we didn't want to make it more we didn't want to do anything to slow this down because this needs to be done, obviously, as soon as possible. The Mouse Creek Road turn lanes, these are city projects. There's a series of 3 turn lanes on Mouse Creek Road that we should decide on and invest on and make sure that we can make it a little bit safer so that people don't have rear end collisions out there and working on it. So that's Mouse Creek Road turn lanes. Those have been on the list here for a couple of years, and we want to make those a much higher priority. Those are the other ones, like the Greenway Wi-Fi that we'll want to talk about as we get into March, making sure that we make commitments to doing some of those things. The Greenway extension to East Circle. This is a project that we have on our city list. This is just a 100-foot extension of the Greenway, but will connect in several different neighborhoods of having, so they can have walking connectivity. They'll be able to walk down the Greenway, and they can literally walk 6 miles if we can get them to their house. We own the Greenway. We have the easements. It's just a matter of aligning Public Works to be able to do that. And we think that probably we hopefully we can get into starting it this fall. Number 34, Peerless and Melrose. This is a section of sidewalk from Peerless going up to Melrose. We will need to do this because the two NEPA projects that on the big 10-foot path coming down 25th Street, you need to have a sidewalk that it connects into. So that project is there, and it's probably not the biggest priority in the world, but we need that to be able to connect in to both of those projects, because both of them end right there, and they need to have something that they can connect into. 17th Street and Georgetown turn lane. Obviously, more turn lanes along that area is what we need. Sequoia Road improvements, those have been completed. The BA home infrastructure, as they said in the paper a couple of weeks ago, that they're getting much closer. The road, we funded the entrance road into that, and that is complete. So that's off our book. That worked out very well. We essentially contracted that out, and so our Public Works folks didn't have to go and spend time doing that, which was a great plus for us. The Inman Street streetscaping, as we've talked about, we do have our latest traffic study that came back, and then they asked for some additional information from Volker to make that happen. They are working on making sure that the state, all the engineers, and us all agree what's the best alignment and how to make that work. It's all in the best, it'll probably take a little longer than we wanted to, but it's much better than getting it wrong. And essentially, it'll be paving and restriping Inman Street, which will, in the future, open it up to potentially have wider sidewalks, and if we can get the traffic to work in the right ways.
So you know what kind of thing that is, or does it extend it out now?
No, I mean, it's imminent. I mean, as far as just the approval on that,
Approval
or the,
start, approval.
well, there's two things. There's getting the state approval, which, what you say, Jonathan, the next 30 days?
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
Probably the next 30 days, and then it will be put on their paving list, and when the state comes in and paves all of that, then they will mark it up to what that is. So it's really up to what they want to do as far as putting that in.
So it's still gonna stay rough, correct?
Yes. There'll be a newly paved state road, which is a benefit. And they're also going to pave all, and I think this is important, all of Broad Street and Accoy Street. I think they're paving Accoy Street out to 25th Street and Wildwood.
West Street, would it have to be milled this time or just overlaid?
I think we're gonna question that. I think we need to.
I don't know what their thinking is on it. We can find out. But we would probably need some milling in some places.
David, was that on Accoy Street, your question? Yeah, I think we're losing the curves, and I think it has to be milled. One more paving is you won't have any curbs out there at all. And the flooding, the way the flooding is in that area is that you need to be able to direct that water somewhere, and if you lose it, that's a problem, and that will be our argument.
So the state won't do the mill?
Yeah, we'll have to,
Yeah, they would do it. I'm not sure if it's in their scope or not. We want it to be milled.
Councilman May, we originally asked them to replace all the curb. And they didn't love that. But we think that it's a reasonable alternative just for them to do some substantial milling instead of replacing the curb. We would prefer they replace the curb, but they have to mill or the water, just the water is just gonna sit in the road. And we'll let you know as we get more information on that. The Phase 6 Greenway, Robert, I believe, has put in the new request for funding.
That's right.
And so we're just waiting. The good news is that we have completed the NEPA process, right?
Yes.
And so we are in the design process, and we already have, we already know what the design looks like. We've spent years and years on trying to design it. So that will be a pretty efficient process. And then we'll get right into right of way. And that there might be some tricky parts of that, but hopefully we can get that project done as soon as possible. The Coy Street bypass, this is a city project. This is making it more accessible that people can get off APD 40, and instead of going through the middle of town, through whether a Coy or Key Street, is it gives a better alternative for people coming in from the south side of the community or the east side of the community and get over to Paul Huff or Stewart, essentially, and go down that. So that's another one that we probably need to talk about in March as far as moving forward. And yes, sir.
Number 39, the Phase 6 of the Greenway, is that is under Inman Street?
You want it under industry?
No, just asking. At one time, that was being discussed.
Yes.
We have designs. It's probably not. It's obviously not the final design, but we have designs of that. Yeah, well, we've already turned in the application, and we can show you what it is. And verbally, is it extends it from where it stops, past Willow Street, follows the creek, comes down and goes underneath the bridge, and then goes straight up alongside Starbucks, and goes into towards the downtown area. And then you have some more wheelchair accessible areas that you have to improve out of the crosswalks on Inman and we'll go right through the Village Green. Right along it. It won't affect it, but we'll get you that.
Some of it winds up being a raised walkway.
What's the definition of a raised walkway?
Not that here.
No, there was designs. There was always a question of going to the far side of the creek or this side of the creek. I think we've decided to stay, and Dr. Estes, I have better recollection, is it stays on this side of the creek, meaning on the non-road, the east side. Thank you. And then it comes down, and you'll have a couple properties there, and then there'll be another bridge because there's two tributaries. There's one that goes underneath Keith, and there's the one that the Dye Creek, that they come like there. So you'll need to have a bridge that crosses there, and so you'll still be on the east side. And on the east side, you go underneath there, and then you go right up along Starbucks.
But you don't own the whole right there yet. Most of it, some of it.
There are, I've seen three different drawings, where you cross, where you go, and I think those will be dependent on if we run into problems. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
We have, which right away were you talking about? Yeah, yeah, there's, I think, 3 properties that we would have to acquire some land. And then there's one home that we have the possibility of having to purchase, or we have a second option that you don't have to purchase that. And I think we're there. It's not an impossible undertaking, but it does get tight through there. It is tight. The one key thing is if those houses up on, is it Brown Avenue, is that where they sit? They sit up, and the creek sits down here. Our pathway will be carved in to the hill, and then there'll be like a 5-foot wall or something. I think that's some of the designs. So then there'll be a fence on top of that. So that's what will help protect some of those houses. They won't even see the people walking down underneath the creek. Any more questions on that? Billy Graham sidewalk. This is a short piece of sidewalk that is on Billy Graham that connects right up Billy Graham from Parker Street to, help me out, what street behind there? People Street. Yes. So that's in on our list. Interlaken Bridge to Greenway. This is a little bridge that you have several neighborhoods there, Interlaken neighborhood, and that essentially they don't actually have access to that the walking loop out there. Is that it's probably a 50-foot piece of sidewalk and a little culvert to drain to get through there to connect in that so they can enjoy that walking nature area. The Freewheel Road, I think it's not lost on us that there's some improvements that need to be done on Freewheel Road. There's a lot of conversation. We've already started the conversation internally. This will be an MPO project. Some of it will be some turn lanes, some shoulder certainly needs to be looked at to improve. Is that road? No. This is all part of the process of also asking the state to take over ownership of this road to be connected into the Eureka 306 project. So there's kind of a long, windy conversation. But it's not lost on us that there's some traffic improvements that need to happen in MPO project. Minnis and Michigan Avenue intersection widening, we have a design for that. Michigan Avenue has a substantial number of neighborhoods that are planned on that are working their way through. This will be another one that's on our list in March to talk about, of finding the funding for this to get this one. And that's also paired with the 20th Street and Michigan Avenue intersection of fixing that. There's some geography issues and some elevation issues, funding issues to make those issues. But
Street and Main Road.
yeah.
But things you may not know, because of science. And some way, somehow, we need to incorporate all that.
And that's why I put those projects both together. Is there's obviously that hump hill that sits in there. You'll have to take that down but then you're cutting into it, and you lose elevation, and there's all kinds of problems. Is there someone smarter than myself will have to figure that out? But that's the only way to. I think that those two changes out there on Michigan Avenue would probably be significant from a safety and transportation standpoint.
So, in my opinion, that, I'm not certainly not an engineer, but it would improve the safety of that.
Yeah. And there's a few areas that need to be widened on Michigan Avenue as well. And we're looking at doing something more conceptual.
Subdivision, if someone can widen it, you know, with third lane or stacking lane or something, so that those people are not walking while they're trying to get in.
And we'll send the county 50% of the bill. But all those are real issues. What we're seeing is a lot of our developable land out there. There's a lot of activity out there, and our instinct from a staff standpoint is this is not one that we can wait and let it happen to us. As we probably have to be proactive on this Michigan Avenue because it could get away from us. And you'll see over the next couple of months what we're talking about. Cleveland, we have our sign. We think that we obviously have the 10-foot walkway. Is that we want to put a curb and walkway in front of 25th Street down past the I-75 interchange. We think this would make it easier to keep that area up. It'll be easier to right now there's just a bunch of gravel. Is that this is something that is probably pretty important and we need to clean up that area. Probably a pretty important project. It's just a matter of fitting it in. So it's on the list and we can talk more about that as well. Candy's Greenway. This is split into two. We got a grant from the HCI funds, and we've had private donations to build the Greenway from Jim Sharp Park. All the right-of-way has been donated by the Westmore Church of God. Is to build this Greenway, which accounts for about a mile, all the way from there, all the way under the bridge that we have the ribbon cutting for, from the bridge out to I-75. This is one of those ones that will have to get done, probably within the next 10 months. We were supposed to have the conversation at the Greenway Board about whether to do concrete or asphalt. I wasn't able to make it for that. This is someone else is funding it, someone else's funds, and we'll have to figure out how to make that happen one way or another. The Wyatt Road, right in, right out, that's the big area in front of Harbor Freight where it's wide open and it's a lot of the reasons that some people have asked, well, why is that area so wide open and like that? A lot of it has to do with Cleveland Utilities transformer there, is they need to be able to get a high-low in there and do things with that in case of emergency. So there was some engineering there, but we'll have to put some type of major curb in there to do that. Then you have 25th Street, the J-turn improvements. This is a TDOT project. We've approved this, and it's just in their system. They're funding 100% of it, and there will be actually a huge improvement along that area. And we hope with this, along with our sidewalk projects along 25th Street, that we can improve our median areas. I think the Sonoma look has maybe outlived its life, and it needs we need to look at that. Certainly not the most important issue in our community, but it certainly, as we're out there working on these projects, that's the time to think about how to make that work.
Joe, can I ask a question about that? Does the J turn improvement and the MMA, TA sidewalk improvement, because those are at two different times, do they need to be done together, or is it better to do them one for each?
None of that matters, but they're both. No, they're not connected, but as we're out there making aesthetic improvements, because on the, what we have probably 50 feet of right of way on, or the state has 50 feet of right of way on 25th Street, because we expect to have a nice curb line, 8 to 10 feet of grass strip with maybe decorative lights with banners saying "Welcome to the City of Cleveland," 10-foot sidewalk, and have it that goes all the way down, even where it cuts into the hill a little bit there, and then with the J turns, they'll have to redo a substantial amount of and close up some of those areas where you have the Sonoma look, and it doesn't matter which one, but I think with both of those, we can really improve that entrance area, make some traffic improvements, make some pedestrian improvements.
Are we doing that in-house? Or J turn doing
It's a TDOT project.
Jonathan, I know, one thing about all the rocks, I don't think we've had any flood on 25th Street since that happened. The burn of the rocks, it flooded back. So, wherever
Because there's
someone feels good,
like 4 foot of sand and it all goes in and traps it.
yeah, they served it, maybe not an aesthetic purpose, but they have served a practical purpose.
The rocks probably aren't the rocks aren't the issue. The issue is having curb or a boundary around them. But I think
Throughput stormwater, whatever that's going to be, I don't know.
that Jonathan hit is probably what really improved that area is that you dug it all out. And I wasn't here for that. But I've seen the cross sections and you literally have inlet pipes down there, and you have 4 feet of sand, and that's probably what got the water off the street into the creeks on the side. Before it was probably just clogging up, or they probably didn't even have a connection.
It made it instant, a real problem, instantly solved. So, yeah, as long as that's on your radar, man, great. Yeah, I mean,
You don't want more flooding? And just to finish up, Mr. Mayor, very quickly, quality of life projects, you have Avery Johnson Park, which has been completed. Patty, I believe we have some summer programming. She just happened to leave. My understanding is we have some soccer programming going on that park is going to be heavily used, and we're excited about that. Mosby Park Playground, whereas the council has already approved the playground, we've met with the neighborhood last week, and we hope to start this summer and get that project completed. The council's already ordered some additional playground equipment, some swings for the Civitan/Stewart Park. Her name is. That will go in the fall, and then probably the one that is one of the projects that keeps me up awake at night is the Tinsley parking issue out in front of the pickleball courts and the tennis courts. That's something that we'll talk about in March to get that going, and that won't be an internal project. It's probably too big. You obviously have the big digestives in there, and you have all of that. That is something, that entranceway into Tinsley Park is way too nice for it to have an entrance like that. And that's why we'll talk about in March. I'll try to make that a priority to get that parking lot back up to where it needs to be. Johnston Park, one item that I had emailed you, someone had donated. They knew that on our plan that we had wanted to remove the stage at Johnston Park, which is not used right now. We had a hard time finding the keys. You can see what was in it, and there was actually nothing in there. With the council's, we don't have any objection. We have a design of the new Milton Johnston Park that will be laying out in March and trying to figure out that if this company wants to come in and demo that stage and pavilion, that was a question that I had asked. If anyone has any concerns with that, no.
Well, after we did talk about completing that part, and some things that left being housed or subbed out.
It will have to be subbed out. That's the right answer, Tommy?
Yes.
It's still planned to be a passive park. A lot of it's just, because you really can't do that much grading because there's all the trees in there and we want to keep the trees. Is that the project is probably ripping up. The only thing our people would have to do is probably do some demo of some of that. Along the back, there'll probably be a couple retaining walls. And we have a design, right, Jeff? We're happy to share that. We'll have a Jim Sharp Park is in the NEPA phase officially. The Nature Walk, which is the area behind the old Rolling Hills area, needs some improvements. And we have the soccer complex that I want to have. We've had probably multiple conversations with the folks at the soccer league about some additional parking, some lighting, some other things. That's something that is that they're very busy out there, and we need to bring and have that dialogue. Then the one-stop shop. So that is a very, very long update. Sometimes I think it's good to go through all the things that we have going on internally. We're all very proud of this, but we're all very tired. But now is not the time to slow down. So I think this is a place, and certainly willing to answer any questions. As we get into March, and we get into our budget discussions, we will refine what are the, there's things on these lists and they're in, if you want to move projects up, we can talk about that. If you want to kick them back, we can talk about that. If there's new projects, we can talk about those. And that's what the conversation in March and maybe the first part of April will entail, and get your priorities, and we'll go through a process for that. But as you see, we have a lot, and quite obviously the question is, what can we afford, and how we can pay for that, and what's important, what are the priorities now versus all the other things being balanced on here. So I think everything is on the table. This stuff can even move if the council wants to think about that, and I wanted you to be able to take this list and think about what are the other things that you're seeing or feeling, and we can kind of work our way.
Joe, when we talked about the bond issue and this main process, wondering that I think we all agree on in agreement to money's cheap to a bond issue and try to speed up some of these projects by actually selling them out to contractors. We can't do them all, but can you give us a list on what you think's feasible that you're going to try to do in-house and that we need to sub out? And at what level is the design work?
Yeah. And as we move forward, I agree with that. We wanted to give you multiple options. Hey, here's one option. Here's just going pay as you go, and this is how long it's going to take us to get to all these. Here's one if you bonded for 5 million and we're able to pull some projects up, and we can give you probably 2 or 3 different options that the council can look at on what's the right type, speed, and internal complications. There's some things that we do very well internally that are 20% off of what a contractor will do. We can tell you, we can talk. And
Tommy saves us more money than that on one project.
but there's some that the margins aren't that big, and those are the ones that we need to look at, is that we don't get the biggest bang for our buck on those, and really are ones that we know that we can get contractors to do. So we'll bring multiple options on there.
Great question, Councilman. Are there any other questions from council? Councilman Webb?
Joe, at one time, was there a project out there in the future on improvements to the 25th Street Girls Road intersection?
There was, and we still have those designs. And I don't know why it's not on this list. See, that's why we invited you today, Mr. Webb.
Great observation. Any other observations from?
We'll add that to the list. Thank you for bringing that up.
I would like to say, Mr. Travis, to you and the staff that put this list together, thank you for the hard work and exhaustiveness of it. But slide 1, you know,
Every survey, every anecdotal comment that I get or Facebook post has something to do with traffic and congestion. And so to see that there's $100 million investment on the part of the city of Cleveland with our partners towards transportation might be the most important slide of the season.
That's why I gave Tim Sinyard only 1 page.
$102 million. 375,000.
but Joe, thank you for that number. I'm not seeing it quantified like that. And that would have been my speech today, had I known that. Because even at Main Street, that was the question about transportation, traffic.
There's a lot going on. I mean, and we're not, you know, and it's not lost on anyone here. We've had those conversations. Our development continues to be very impressive. I think on Friday alone, we had 96 inspections that we had to do for just our building inspection department. You know, I think that it's a very exciting time. I think that you know, whether you're in the fire department, whether you're in the police department, whether you're in the building or Parks and Recreation, is it's an exciting time, but it's a busy time. And just to give you a couple of examples of, you know, the just the huge amounts, and Dr. Estes can attest for that. On, you know, we had a couple of meetings ago, 26 items on the Planning Commission. Is that, you know, things are truly happening out there, and it's important, and we're just trying to make sure that we don't miss anything, and we're trying to, you know, think, well, what did we miss this week? You know, but then you talk about the things that we don't necessarily hear about, like, and Patty came back, I was going to say good things, and you left. You know, we had our, you know, Cleveland Youth Basketball League, you know, where they, and we've talked about it before, they had 700 people. The championships were aired on Mix 104. That you had, that it was such a successful season, and just a great effort by our staff. And how many cheerleaders did we have?
Right at 150.
We had cheerleaders and women's, girls basketball and boys basketball, and youth sports is coming back. I think it was Jonathan who said that in the county's baseball leagues, they had 1,200 people sign up this last week. And so you see that the numbers is that there's something happening with our youth sports out there, and that's larger than it usually is, right? And we're seeing the same thing, but we have we have our new Avery Johnson, we have some soccer leagues and things planned out there. We have volleyball going on. We have so many things that we're just trying to keep up with the demand. I just think all of our people, from our frontline personnel to anyone in between, just loves coming to work, but it's also a very hard time. Better than the alternative.
Well, the staff does a great job, city staff, but I want to take this minute to compliment my colleagues on the council who did not get to hear me brag on you today. Ken did, but none of this would be possible. None of these 51 items on this list would be possible if the council had not done the tough heavy lifting of getting our finances in order, getting our debt refinanced, reducing the debt by $30 million in the last 3 years. So kudos to the council for getting us in a financial place that we can, in the middle of a pandemic, that we can now move forward and do some really fantastic things for the future. So I just want to say that publicly. Thank you. Mr. Fivas?
I'm done with all of that. I have a couple more announcements, and then I can go to the agenda. We've met with Cleveland Utilities, and there was a conversation we had at the last council meeting about the lighting around the parking lot over by between Broad Street and Worth Street. I think we have a plan and a design, but what we told them is to add on to that and is to add some additional lighting on Worth Street. I think that was discussed, but also add some additional lighting interior in that parking lot and put some floodlights that will throw some light in there. So that's just getting back to a conversation that was happening at the last meeting, is to improve Worth, improve probably that parking area. That's a positive thing. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll get something back from CEO that we can between Worth, between the $1 million. April 9th is the Hot Slaw and Y'all Festival. That's going along just fine.
I'm a hot slaw judge.
How do you judge a good?
Please bring tongues.
The Peerless intersection design, I think I'm happy to show that. Yes. That we're looking at that as far as some of the designs have a right in, right out at Valleyhead. And so we're looking at all those possibilities, and before we go out to bid with that, the council will have to review that and make sure that we have all our bases covered. Johnson Park, we talked a little bit about that demo permit for that. There is in front of you the Greenway Board passed out what their priorities are. If you want to take a look at that, I think we have many of them incorporated into the list that we put through. And as we started off, we do have a new projector system that's or LED system that will be installed in the next week, and that will be exciting. And with that, Mr. Mayor, if anyone doesn't have any questions, I'd go to the agenda.
Absolutely. Let's proceed.
Moving to the agenda, we have on the consent agenda, item 7A is allowing the mayor to submit an application to the home housing rehab rehabilitation project. And that's just an application to hopefully get funding. We have 7B, which is a resolution 2213, is authorizing the mayor to sign a change order for Wilson Construction on 17th and 20th Street sidewalk projects. That's about a $6,000 change order. There was some old utility stuff that needed to be cleared out, and we were being delayed, so we just decided to have them cleared out for $6,000.
We paid, it'll be all money or city.
80/20, but I'll check.
80/20. Resolution 22-14 authorizing mayor to sign a sewer easement with Cleveland Utilities connecting trails at Free Will. The subdivision, that's the subdivision at Free Will and Candies. I believe, are starting to lose some out there, I heard.
Yeah.
And so now they can actually have sewer. They can approve this easement. Item 7D is a resolution 22-15 author.
That is on Free Will, not Candy, correct? On that sewer, you're cutting any roads at all, doing that?
No, but it's right in the middle of your park. No, I'm kidding. No. Well, the long story is that Jim Sharp Park is that at first it was proposed to go on there, and we said, well, we can't do that. So it's across the street.
Call it free.
Across the creek. We have resolution 2215 authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement with City Fields regarding the American Rescue Funds. We did the Habitat last meeting. We've already approved this. This is just how the money, how we reimburse that process. Then we have resolution 2216 authorizing the mayor to sign a supplemental agreement with Volker for the 17th and 17th sidewalk agreement. This is CEI, I believe, Jonathan. And then we have surplus property as vehicle surplus for Parks and Recreation, sold on Gov Deals. We have a streetlight recommendation for Earl Cameron on the area of 2nd Street Southwest and Spring Street Southwest and 3rd Street Southwest. And their Cleveland Utilities recommending installing one new 41 watt Cobra light bulb there. Then you have a motion to become members of the Tennessee Clean Coalition, and Mr. Mayor, you can explain what that is.
Sure, in response to our work with Councilwoman McKenzie, and some of the other cleanup articles, the Tennessee Clean Coalition reached out to us as a city and would like to express their support and cooperation in getting all of Tennessee clean. And asked if the city of Cleveland would sign up officially as part of the Clean Coalition. It is the Anti-Litter Coalition. It dovetails into the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. I think it's a fantastic sort of marriage between what we have already begun here in Cleveland, what we already believe, we're sort of codifying it officially with the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. So good work, Councilwoman.
It does not cost a lot.
Does not cost any money.
Moving on to new business, we have resolution 22-17, which is approving the eminent domain proceedings if necessary to acquire the necessary rights of way for the easements involved in the Park Street sidewalk project. I passed out an exhibit that kind of talks about some of the properties that existed. We think that there's probably a pretty strong chance that we can get all of those, but we don't have any time to waste, so we're just starting that process. Resolution 2218, resolution 2219. Essentially, we are beginning the issuance of bonds. This would be a dual use. Cleveland Utilities would be doing some funding for water capital improvements, and the city will have some money for there. This is initial to start the process. We still have to go through March and work with the council on what the full scope is and what our full needs are. And it can move up or down. We have some, and we'll probably have to update them. We have year by year how much it will cost if you do it this methodology, if you do it over 25 years, if you do it over 20 years. All those decisions have to be done. This is just starting the process. And in our council meetings in March, and we'll have more conversations on right sizing that number and giving you some of that diagnostics. I think that Councilman May was talking about if we need to move stuff up, what's the right size? How do we fund it? We have some ARP money out there, and let's bring that full package together to do there. So this is just setting up the parameters for what we're going to do, and we'll bring back multiple options for you guys to look at as we move through. So you are not approving. You're starting the process unless you stop it. I mean, we would go forward, but it says up to that amount. So you have complete flexibility, and we'll have many conversations, as we will on the entire budget over the next 2 or 3 meetings. So that being said, happy to address any questions.
Any questions from the council on the review of the agenda? All right, that takes us to reports from council members. We begin with Councilman May. Thank you. Councilman Hughes indicated he would also wait. Councilman Webb.
Joe, do you know if Clinton Utilities has had a chance to look at the street lighting on the Cambridge line?
Yes, they have.
Recommendation?
They made a recommendation, and we wanted to have a conversation with them to make sure that we understood it in case you guys had questions. But they sent us something, and we just want to cross our T's and dot our I's before we bring it, so it'll probably be the next meeting.
Thank you, I appreciate you doing that. One other thing, and this kind of dovetails with what we're talking about on the blue. I believe it was about this time last year that we began the process of trying to get some of the litter that accumulated over the winter time picked up. And if there's any way we could do some of that this year, I think the time is right to do it.
Now we're part of the Tennessee Clean Coalition, and it will magically go away.
You're a little more optimistic than I am.
Maybe, we agree.
It is showing up again.
Yeah, we agree.
So,
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Joe, I mentioned it to you, I think, a while back, on Villa, they're building 180 new apartments. And we talked about a sidewalk right across from where the kids, a lot of kids would probably be walking to school, even middle school, and we need just a sidewalk coming up Villa. I don't know, maybe it's 100 feet, something like that. And that would be probably 53.
We already have that planned in. We talked internally, and what he's talking about is that first neighborhood is that you have the sidewalks out on the new Georgetown project, and he's just saying, right now, those sidewalks already sweep down around, and we probably just have to extend them 50 feet or so.
Yeah.
So that's something that Tommy would
want. 3 years ago.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilwoman McKenzie. Thank you, Madam. Councilman Estes.
Quickly, to my colleagues, the letter from the Greenway Committee, we had a good recruiting, good meeting. I think the committee is still committed to phase 6 in number 1, even though it's on here, we know we have to wait a year. One thing I know, Robert, you said you submitted in about the Gulf Street swap. But this is great, and I'm really glad Joe was dovetailed with some of the stuff that we saw today. We are under no illusion, the committee's under no illusion that a lot of what we want to do falls on city. I mean, it falls on the work on staff. So we just not let I know you weren't there, but we talked at the committee meeting with the river commission in the state. So, that's not on. Secondly, Chief Gaylor, he hit my desk this week about the training that's going on and the research on your men and women at the university and with the new recruits. And I didn't really know the extent. I know they had a little piece in the paper a couple weeks ago, but I got to see what's coming down the pike. It's impressive. I mean, it's super professional on y'all's part. Kudos. And the last thing is a couple of great athletic events that I think maybe we might want to talk about at 3 o'clock when we're on the rec. Cleveland Wrestling women's tennis fifth double in a row. And then Christian Noble for the university breaking the 4-minute mile and setting the BT national record this weekend in Boston. That's just unbelievable. Then, you know, you have this athletic league that can on its own forward. So I don't know what we can do for Cleveland Wrestling. Maybe we need to get them here. If we haven't before, we can promote this, but I'll trust the rest of you on something I'd like to see next year. Or maybe even Christian Noble as well. My Twitter blew up from people all over the United States that I don't even know. It is really, it's huge. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman, yes.
Nothing, Mayor, at this time.
All right. Thank you, Councilman. Take us to number 5 on the agenda, which is announcements. We have none. 6,